I still remember the day I stumbled upon the truth. It was a Tuesday, an ordinary day that turned into one of the most pivotal moments of my life. The sun filtered through the blinds of our modest kitchen, casting striped shadows on the table where we shared countless meals and laughter. My wife, Sarah, had left early for a yoga class, a routine she had adopted in the past few months. I was in the middle of my morning coffee when I noticed a stack of unopened mail on the counter, a rare sight in our household. Usually, Sarah was meticulous about sorting through our bills and bank statements, but this batch had somehow escaped her attention. As I sifted through the letters, I found a plain envelope addressed to her. The sender was a bank I didn't recognize, and my heart began to race. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. Inside was a bank statement that detailed a secret account in her name, one I had never heard of before. My mind raced as I read the figures. There were transactions that didn't make sense. Large withdrawals, frequent payments to places I had never heard of, and a balance that suggested she had been saving for something significant. A storm of emotions surged within me: confusion, betrayal, anger. I felt as if the floor had dropped out from beneath me. How could she hide this from me? I had always prided myself on our open communication, our transparency with one another. The account felt like a dagger to my heart, a chilling reminder that something was terribly wrong. I put the statement down, my hands trembling. I had never suspected her of infidelity, but the evidence was right there in front of me. My mind began to race through the past few months, her late nights at work, the sudden interest in her appearance. Had I been blind all this time? I thought back to the little signs I had brushed off. Now they all seemed so glaringly obvious. I knew I had to investigate further. I couldn't confront her yet. I needed more evidence before I made any accusations. The thought of betrayal gnawed at me, but I also felt a sense of determination rising within me. I had to understand what was happening. I grabbed my laptop and began to dig deeper. I opened a new tab and started searching for the bank's website, my fingers shaking as I typed. I needed to know everything about this account. As I navigated through the bank's online portal, I felt a mixture of dread and resolve. I was crossing a line into a territory I never wanted to explore, but I had to protect myself. I needed to know whether the money in that account was being used for an affair, whether Sarah was betraying everything we had built together. With each click, I was sinking deeper into a rabbit hole of mistrust and betrayal. I felt like a detective in a noir film, piecing together clues that would either confirm my worst fears or lead me to a misunderstanding. The truth was, I didn't want to believe it. I wanted to trust her, to believe that our marriage was strong enough to withstand anything. But how could I ignore the evidence that lay before me? I spent the rest of the day in a haze, my mind racing with questions. I couldn't focus on work, and every time my phone buzzed, I half expected it to be Sarah. I imagined her smile, the way her eyes sparkled when she laughed. I wanted to cling to those memories, but the shadow of the bank statement loomed over me, dark and foreboding. The day dragged on, each hour stretching into eternity. I felt trapped in my own thoughts, unable to escape the reality of what I had discovered. I had to know more. I had to prepare myself for whatever lay ahead. The days that followed were a blur of confusion and turmoil. I felt like I was living in a dream, one that had turned into a nightmare. Each time I looked at Sarah, her laughter echoed like a distant memory, a haunting reminder of what I thought we had. The warmth of our shared moments felt cold, tainted by the gnawing suspicion that she was hiding something monumental. I tried to go about my daily routine, but I was a ghost in my own life. The coffee shop where I used to enjoy my morning brew became a suffocating cage. My coworkers noticed my distraction, but I brushed off their concerns with half-hearted smiles and vague excuses. Inside, I was a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, betrayal, sadness, and confusion all collided within me. I was a man on the verge of unraveling. Every time I saw her, I was reminded of the bank statement. I would watch her as she moved around our home, her laughter echoing through the halls, and I would feel a sickening twist in my stomach. How could she be so carefree while hiding such a significant part of her life? I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but I was terrified. What if I was wrong? What if this was all a misunderstanding, a series of unfortunate coincidences? The last thing I wanted was to accuse her without concrete evidence. I found myself replaying our conversations in my head, searching for clues, for signs that I had missed. I recalled the night she came home late, claiming she had been stuck in traffic. The way she had looked at her phone during dinner, as if she were waiting for a message. The little things that I had dismissed as trivial now loomed larger than life. I felt like a fool for not seeing it sooner. Those sleepless nights became a breeding ground for my insecurities. I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, imagining her with someone else. The thought of her in another man's arms, laughing and sharing secrets, twisted the knife deeper into my heart. I felt betrayed, not just by her but by the life we had built together. It was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing a reality I had been blissfully unaware of. I tried to have conversations with her, but I found it nearly impossible to bring up the subject of money. Each time I opened my mouth, the words would get stuck in my throat. Instead, I would ask her about her day, feigning interest while my mind raced with questions I was too afraid to voice. I felt like I was living a double life, one where I was the loving husband and another where I was a detective unraveling a mystery. I began to obsess over the details of the bank statement. I started researching the locations of the transactions, where the money was going. I found myself tracing every dollar, trying to connect the dots. It was exhausting, and yet I couldn't stop. Each click on the computer felt like a step closer to the truth, and yet it was also a journey into despair. I thought about the future, about what would happen if everything I feared was true. Would I be forced to confront her? Would I have to make a choice between love and self-preservation? The thought terrified me. I had always believed in the sanctity of marriage, in the vows we took, but now those vows felt like empty words, a facade that masked the reality of betrayal. I often found myself staring at our wedding photo, the two of us beaming with happiness. It felt like a lifetime ago, a moment frozen in time before everything changed. I wanted to scream, to shake her and demand the truth, but I also feared the fallout. The thought of losing Sarah, of tearing apart the life we had built, paralyzed me. In those dark moments, I often sought solace in the quiet of my thoughts. I would ask myself questions that had no answers. How could she do this to me? Did she ever love me at all? Each question felt like a stab in the chest, a reminder of the pain that was slowly consuming me. I was losing myself to this turmoil, and it felt as if I was standing on the edge of a precipice, ready to fall. I knew I had to confront her eventually, but I needed to be prepared. I needed to gather evidence, to fortify myself with the truth before I faced her. The emotional turmoil was relentless, but I was determined to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The days turned into weeks as I continued my quiet investigation. I had become a shadow in my own home, a man driven by a singular purpose: to uncover the truth about Sarah and her secret bank account. I felt like a detective in a crime novel, piecing together fragments of a puzzle that had been deliberately obscured. Each new piece of evidence I found only deepened my resolve, but it also drew me further into a pit of despair. To gather more information, I decided to monitor her behavior more closely. I took note of her phone habits, the way she would often step into another room to take calls. I couldn't help but wonder who she was talking to and what they were discussing. The nagging thoughts consumed me, and I felt a mix of paranoia and anger bubbling beneath the surface. I knew it was unhealthy, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was on the brink of revealing something monumental. One afternoon, I found myself in a coffee shop, pretending to work while keeping an eye on the door. I had noticed that Sarah would often meet someone during her lunch breaks, and I had a sinking feeling that it was related to the account. I was determined to find out if she was seeing someone else. I sat at a corner table, nursing a cold cup of coffee, and waited. After what felt like an eternity, I saw her walk in, her smile bright and carefree. But that smile faded when she caught sight of a man sitting at the table across from her. I clenched my fists under the table as I watched them greet each other with a warmth that made my stomach churn. They leaned in close, exchanging laughter and whispers, and I felt my heart race with each passing second. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I didn't need to. The body language spoke volumes. The way she brushed her hair back, the way she laughed at something he said, it was everything I had feared. I pulled out my phone, trying to discreetly capture a photo, but my hands were shaking so much that I ended up with a blurry mess. I cursed under my breath, feeling helpless and infuriated. After what seemed like an eternity, they finally stood up to leave. I followed them out of the coffee shop, my heart pounding in my chest. They walked side by side, oblivious to my presence, and I felt like a voyeur lurking in the shadows. I trailed them, keeping a safe distance, my mind racing with questions. Where were they going? What were they planning? They headed toward a nearby park, a place I had often visited with Sarah when we were dating. The memories flooded back, lazy afternoons spent lounging on the grass, sharing dreams and laughter. Now it felt like a dagger to my heart to see her there with another man. I kept my distance, watching as they sat down on a bench, sharing a moment that should have belonged to us. I wanted to confront her right then and there, to demand answers, but I held back. I needed more proof. I needed to understand the depth of her betrayal before I confronted her. I turned on my heel and walked away, my heart heavy with the weight of what I had witnessed. That night I couldn't sleep. I replayed the scene in my mind, the laughter, the intimacy. I felt like I was losing her all over again, and the pain was unbearable. I needed to confront her, but I also needed to be strategic. I couldn't approach her without solid evidence. I decided to dig into the bank records again, hoping to find something that would give me the clarity I needed. I spent hours poring over the statements, looking for anything that might connect her to the man I had seen. I discovered more transactions that raised my suspicions: a hotel booking, payments to restaurants, and even a couple of charges at a boutique I knew she loved. Each item felt like a punch to the gut, confirming my worst fears. She was living a double life, and I was just a pawn in her game. In the following days, I continued my surveillance. I took mental notes of her routines, her excuses for staying late, and the little details that seemed off. I even enlisted the help of a close friend who had a background in finance. I shared my suspicions about the secret account and the potential affair, and he helped me analyze the transactions further. Together, we crafted a plan to gather more evidence, to make sure I was prepared for the confrontation that loomed ahead. I felt like I was on a tightrope, balancing between the desire to confront her and the need to gather enough evidence to protect myself. The emotional turmoil was draining, but I was determined to get to the bottom of this. I couldn't let her betrayal go unchallenged. I had to protect myself, not just emotionally but financially as well. As I continued my investigation, I felt a sense of empowerment growing within me. I was no longer just a passive victim. I was taking control of my life, my finances, and my future. The anger fueled me, giving me the strength to push forward. I knew that the day of reckoning was coming, and when it did, I would be ready. After a week of sleepless nights and relentless searching, I reached a breaking point. I had gathered enough evidence to confirm my worst fears, but I still needed to protect myself financially before confronting Sarah. The thought of her using our joint finances to fuel her affair was unbearable. I couldn't allow that to happen. I decided it was time to take action. I had always been the responsible one when it came to money, ensuring we had savings for emergencies and a solid plan for the future. But now, I found myself in a situation where that foresight felt like a double-edged sword. I had trusted Sarah with our finances, and here I was, faced with the reality of her betrayal. I arranged to meet with my financial advisor under the pretense of wanting to discuss our long-term investments. As I sat in the familiar office, I felt a knot tightening in my stomach. This was it. I was about to take a step that would alter the course of my life. "Is everything all right?" my advisor asked, noticing my unease. I forced a smile and nodded. "Just some concerns about the market. I want to ensure we're positioned well," I lied, trying to keep my voice steady. We went over our accounts, and I felt a mix of dread and determination as I watched the numbers on the screen. I needed to ensure that I had access to our funds without Sarah being aware of my intentions. I couldn't let her drain our accounts or use our savings for whatever scheme she had concocted. I needed to create a financial buffer for myself. After discussing our investment strategy, I took a deep breath and made my move. I think it might be wise to withdraw a portion of our savings and transfer it to a separate account, just in case, I suggested, trying to sound casual. My advisor raised an eyebrow but didn't push back. We discussed the logistics, and I decided to transfer a significant amount into a new account under my name only. It felt like a betrayal in itself, but I reminded myself that this was a protective measure. I had to look out for my own interests, especially now that I had confirmed Sarah's infidelity. Once the transfer was completed, I felt a surge of relief mixed with guilt. I had just taken a step that felt like a betrayal of its own, but I knew it was necessary. The money was mine, earned through our shared efforts, but I had to ensure it was safe from her grasp. I left the office feeling a strange sense of empowerment. Now that I had secured my finances, I felt a slight weight lifted off my shoulders. I was no longer just a victim of circumstance. I was taking control of my future. But that sense of empowerment was fleeting, overshadowed by the impending confrontation with Sarah. I knew I had to face her, but I needed to be ready. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chair across from me. I envisioned our discussions, the plans we had made, and the dreams we had shared. I felt a deep sadness wash over me. The woman I loved was slipping away, and I was left holding the pieces of a shattered trust. As I prepared for the confrontation, I decided to write down my thoughts and feelings. I needed clarity before facing her. I poured my heart onto the page, expressing my anger, confusion, and hurt. I wrote about the betrayal, the hidden account, and the man I had seen her with. It felt cathartic to put my feelings into words, but it also solidified the reality of what I was about to face. In my mind, I rehearsed the conversation I would have with her. I imagined her reactions, the denial, the excuses. I wanted to be calm, collected, and rational, but I knew emotions would run high. I had to stay focused on the facts, on the evidence I had gathered. As the night wore on, I felt a mix of dread and anticipation. I was finally ready to confront her, to demand answers. I had protected myself financially, but now I needed to protect my heart. I had to be prepared for whatever response she would give me, whether it be remorse, anger, or denial. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of determination. I knew I couldn't put this off any longer. It was time to face the truth, to confront Sarah about the hidden bank account and the affair I suspected. I felt a knot in my stomach as I imagined how the conversation would unfold, but I steeled myself for what lay ahead. The time for investigation was over. It was time for confrontation. The moment I had been dreading and anticipating finally arrived. I had spent the morning packing around the house, my mind racing with scenarios of how the confrontation would unfold. I could feel the weight of the evidence I had gathered pressing down on my chest, a constant reminder of the truth I was about to unveil. When Sarah walked through the door that evening, she was her usual self, cheerful and animated. She greeted me with a warm smile, and for a brief moment I was reminded of the love we once shared. But that feeling quickly faded as I recalled the bank statement, the hidden account, and the man I had seen her with. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "Hey, how was your day?" she asked, tossing her bag onto the couch and making her way to the kitchen. "It was fine. Can we talk for a minute?" I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. Her expression shifted, a flicker of concern crossing her face. "Sure, what's up?" I gestured for her to sit down at the kitchen table. The atmosphere felt heavy, the air thick with unspoken words. I sat across from her, my heart pounding in my chest. "Sarah, I found something in the mail that I think we need to discuss." I began, trying to keep my tone calm and collected. I pulled out the bank statement and slid it across the table toward her. "This." Her eyes widened as she glanced at the paper, and I watched her expression shift from confusion to realization. "What is this?" she asked, her voice suddenly defensive. "It's a bank statement for an account you've been hiding from me. I want to know why you have this account and what you've been using it for," I said, my voice firm. She hesitated, her eyes darting away from mine. "I can explain," she started, but I cut her off. "Explain what? Explain why you have a secret account, or why I've been noticing you've been acting differently. I need the truth, Sarah." Her defenses went up, and I could see her scrambling to formulate a response. It's not what you think. I didn't want to worry you about our finances. I've just been saving for a surprise. A surprise? I echoed, incredulous. You expect me to believe that? This isn't just a surprise fund. This is a significant amount of money. I've seen the transactions. They don't add up. I could see the panic in her eyes as she realized the severity of the situation. Okay, maybe I should have told you about the account, but I was trying to be responsible. I didn't want to stress you out. Stress me out, you're hiding money and lying to me. This is about more than just finances now, I snapped, my voice rising. I saw you with a man at the park. You were laughing and sharing a moment that should have been ours. What's going on? Her face drained of color, and for a moment I thought I might see a flicker of guilt or remorse. But instead, she crossed her arms defensively. You're jumping to conclusions. I was just meeting a friend. You can't accuse me of cheating based on what you saw. Friend. I shot back, my anger boiling over. You think I'm going to believe that? You've been lying to me, Sarah. You've been spending our money on someone else. I deserve to know the truth. She looked away, her expression shifting from defiance to uncertainty. I didn't mean for it to get this far. I didn't want to hurt you. But you did hurt me. You've betrayed my trust. I could feel the tears prickling at the corners of my eyes, but I fought to keep my composure. Do you even understand the impact of what you've done? I didn't think it was that serious, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Not serious. You've been leading a double life. I can't believe you would do this to me. The silence that followed was deafening. The weight of our shared memories hung in the air, suffocating. I felt the walls closing in as I stared at the woman I had loved, now a stranger before me. I need you to be honest with me, Sarah. Are you having an affair? I asked, my voice trembling with emotion. She hesitated, and in that moment I saw the truth reflected in her eyes. Yes, she finally admitted, her voice breaking. I didn't want to hurt you. I thought I could manage it all. The admission hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt the world around me spin as I tried to process her words. You thought you could manage it by lying to me, by hiding money. Sarah, this isn't just a mistake, this is a betrayal. I know, she said, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I got caught up in something I didn't know how to get out of. The pain I felt was indescribable. Every memory, every moment we had shared together felt tainted by her betrayal. I had trusted her completely, and now that trust lay shattered before me. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again. The silence that followed felt like an eternity. I had confronted her, and I had the answers I had been seeking. But the truth was a bitter pill to swallow, and I felt lost in the aftermath of it all. In the days that followed the confrontation, my world felt like it had been turned upside down. I had faced Sarah with the truth, and now I was left to pick up the pieces of a relationship that had once felt solid and unwavering. The weight of her betrayal hung heavily in the air, a constant reminder of what we had lost. After that fateful conversation, Sarah and I had a series of discussions that were as painful as they were necessary. We talked about the affair, about her reasons for hiding the bank account, and the feelings that had led her to seek solace in another man. Each word felt like a stab to my heart, but I needed to understand the full extent of her actions. I learned that the man she had been seeing was someone she had met through work. Initially, it seemed innocent, a friendship that had spiraled into something more. She claimed it was never meant to happen, but the emotional connection had grown stronger over time. The more she spoke, the more I realized that her actions were rooted in a deep-seated dissatisfaction with our relationship. I felt a mix of anger and sadness as she laid bare her feelings. I thought I could find happiness elsewhere, that it would fill the void, she confessed, tears streaming down her cheeks. But I realize now that I was wrong. I never wanted to hurt you. Hearing her words only intensified the turmoil within me. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but instead, I found myself retreating into silence. I had always believed that love could conquer all, but now I was faced with the harsh reality that love was not enough when trust had been shattered. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself grappling with the decision of what to do next. I had taken the necessary steps to protect myself financially, but emotionally I felt adrift. I sought the advice of friends and family, who urged me to consider what I truly wanted. "You deserve happiness," my sister said gently. "You need to decide if you can rebuild or if it's time to let go." I spent sleepless nights reflecting on my life with Sarah. I thought about the moments we had shared, the laughter and love that had once defined our relationship. But I also recalled the signs I had overlooked, the moments of distance that had paved the way for her betrayal. It was a painful realization that the foundation of our marriage had been eroded long before the affair began. Ultimately, I knew I had to make a choice, not just for Sarah, but for myself. I had to decide whether I was willing to forgive her and work toward rebuilding our relationship, or if it was time to walk away and reclaim my own happiness. One evening, as we sat across from each other at the kitchen table, I finally found the courage to voice my decision. "I want to try to rebuild our relationship," I said slowly, my heart racing. "But it's going to take time and it's going to be hard. I need to know that you're committed to making this work." Sarah nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and guilt. "I'll do whatever it takes," she promised. "I know I've made mistakes, but I want to make it right. I love you, and I'm willing to fight for us." Her words offered a glimmer of hope, but I knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. We began attending couples counseling, where we could explore our feelings and the issues that had led to her infidelity. It was uncomfortable and painful, but I knew it was necessary. As we worked through our issues, I realized that rebuilding trust would take time and effort on both our parts. I had to learn to voice my needs and concerns, and she had to be open to listening and understanding. It was a long journey, filled with setbacks and breakthroughs, but I felt a sense of purpose in the process. I also focused on my own healing. I started journaling, channeling my emotions into written words. I sought support from friends who listened without judgment and offered encouragement. I took time for myself, rediscovering hobbies and passions that had been overshadowed by the turmoil of our relationship. Through it all, I learned valuable lessons about love, trust, and self-preservation. I realized that while love could be a powerful force, it was equally important to prioritize my own well-being. I had to be strong enough to walk away if necessary, but I also had to be open to the possibility of forgiveness and growth. As months passed, I began to see the glimmers of hope in our relationship. We were learning to communicate better, to express our feelings honestly. The laughter that had once filled our home began to return, albeit tentatively. There were still moments of pain and reminders of the betrayal, but we were committed to working through them together. In the end, I understood that trust could be rebuilt, but it would take time and effort. I had faced the truth about Sarah's actions, and in doing so, I had also faced my own vulnerabilities. I was learning to navigate the complexities of love and betrayal, and while the journey was far from over, I was determined to find my way through it. As I looked back on everything that had happened, I felt a sense of resilience growing within me. I had taken control of my finances and my life, and I was ready to embrace whatever the future held, whether it was together with Sarah or on my own. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was no longer afraid. I had faced the darkness, confronted the truth, and emerged stronger. I was ready to reclaim my happiness, one step at a time.